Hey there, welcome back to TGL Baltimore Presents. I am Baltimore, and today I am bringing you Age of X-Man, which was a 5-issue miniseries over 5 titles for 5 months, which basically brought an end to the X universe as we know it with the reboot of House of X and Powers of 10. But Age of X-Man is basically Nate Gray, who is X-Man, has created an alternate universe sort of thing, a utopian society ideal that he has thrust all the X-Men that were against him in the X-Men Disassembled arc, which is 10 issues of Uncanny X-Men. And so at the end of that, with the life seed that he had gathered, he created a utopian society which would be devoid of, conflict, and the reasons why people have conflict is because of love. So while on its head, it's an interesting concept, a world without, erotic love, emotional, physical love, and what that kind of does to a society. Does it kind of eliminate the conflict, eliminate the bad outcomes of love? You break up, it's terrible. So all these kind of concepts kind of follow through. And so it was interesting because, X-Men was created way back in Age of Apocalypse, which is another one of those alternate universe stories. And if you know me, I love all of those kind of things, those alternate universe stories where you get different kind of tales of these superheroes, like how their lives changed because of one moment, one incident. And, he was created to be the genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, Nate Gray, called X-Man, and he was basically the counterpart to Cable when they did Age of Apocalypse. And like Age of Apocalypse, which was started by Legion, which is the son of Xavier and Gabrielle Haller. David Haller is Legion. Legion is also a part of this Age of X-Men series. He is involved with part of why it is going on. But the idea, central concept of Age of X-Men is he was tired of all these conflicts and he was going to stop them. He was going to eliminate religion. He was going to eliminate all the reasons why mutants were persecuted, hated, feared, and why all the X-Men's problems continued because of love. If they didn't have love, they weren't doing all this stuff, then the other problems would cease to exist. And that was his kind of concept. Coming from a mutant shaman situation, coming from his being empowered by the life seed, he decided this was the only solution. Jean Grey tried to reason with him, tried to stop him, and she called all the X-Men that she could to get to, stop him. If they were going to have to go to a fight, she was going to bring all the people that she could. And then Nate Gray, plunges the life seed into him, and he eliminates all the X-Men. X-Men are gone. So the real Marvel Universe just treats it as all the X-Men have been just killed. No one survives except for the ones who weren't there at that actual last final battle. So in Age of X-Men, he is rewriting all of history. He has actually inserted himself into the original 5 and eliminated Beast. Beast has gone into the Prisoner X title. And so it's kind of interesting because there's 5 separate titles following along, similarly to Age of Apocalypse, where there's all these other different titles, and they kind of coalesce and figure out what's going on. In this one, you have Next Gen, which is basically all the students from the Xavier School. They're there, Next Gen. Then you have the X-Tremists, who are basically the people who watch over everybody, make sure that anything that's going on, any illicit affairs or whatever, are taken care of. Then you have Prisoner X, which is where people who have done these crimes or whatever go to. They are confined, they're taken off the board. Then you have the Amazing Nightcrawler, which follows him as he is basically a movie star and those complications. Then you have the Marvelous X-Men. And that was basically the main X-Men heroes as they go through figuring out what's the actual story. And then this is bookended by Age of X-Men Alpha and Age of X-Men Omega. So it kind of sets up the stories, and then kind of the last one kind of ends everything and figures out, how they come back to the regular Marvel universe. Um, I think the worst thing about this 5 issues, 5 month long story is that everyone knew that Jonathan Hickman's work was coming in, and so this was a placeholder. So it was never going to have the impact and appeal because everyone was just waiting for Hickman. So I think that's a shame, but also, I would you want to be the last thing that people read before House of X, or would you? So I think there was a little bit of challenge there, and I just don't think this landed very well. I think some of the art was great on it. I thought the concept was interesting, but 5 issues for 5 months wore out its welcome really quickly in a lot of the titles. So that was pretty unfortunate, and it just didn't have the impact. I mean, in this world, Nate created everyone as mutants. There were no humans. Everybody was mutant. It was a mutant utopia society. It was basically set out for all these people to be happy. It was him trying to fulfill Xavier's dream. And I think I forgot one, Apocalypse and the X-Tracts, which was another title. Yeah, see, I can't even remember all of them. That's not great. So the titles, while it was interesting to see a lot of the characters get some new life and new depth, I mean, if you want to talk about taking a character who's really just one note and give them some depth and real pathos and an emotional journey, in X-Tremists, read that book for Blob alone. And I'm serious, because Blob is it's like, his powers being, fat and immovable. But his storyline was incredible. His storyline with Psylocke was just a breath of fresh air. And if anything crossed over from this, that would be one character's journey and story that I would want to read more of. Because he was created, I think it was the second or third issue of X-Tremists of 1963, and it's now 2019, and this is the first time I'm actually caring about him. That goes to say a lot for the writer on that. I thought Gen X was pretty interesting because I always love the younger students. I love seeing them get highlighted, and they get shafted pretty easily because there's just so many of them, and they pretty much feel like cannon fodder. Anytime anyone needs to die, they're the first on the chopping block. But I really love seeing them. Glob Herman is another character I didn't really care about, and he's slowly grown on me. And I thought they did a great job with him. Him being one of the characters who is one of the only ones who remembers the regular Marvel universe, and he is trying to help everybody and save everybody and get them to wake up and realize. So that's a great little storyline he has with Armor. Pixie's in it. Anole was a great character there. He was one who was constantly being caught and having his memories erased because of him remembering, the real universe. And he still always finds a way to rebel, and I thought that was great kind of like character work there for him. And in Apocalypse and X-Tracts, kind of forgettable. You have Kitty and Dazzler, which I love, but she was kind of like, You had a new character to unveil. Apocalypse was in a Kid Apocalypse Genesis. And it just kind of was like, it felt like such a filler concept and a filler title, and it just didn't really hit me where I wanted it to. I just was kind of like, okay. The X-Tremists was really good because you had some of my favorite characters in it. You had Northstar, Iceman, Psylocke, Blob, who was great, Jubilee in it, and then a terrible character called Moneta, who was just awful, like grating. And I get probably that's why she was created that way, but to be that, but I was just like, at the end when, spoiler alert, she dies, I was like, yes, please. I mean, die anyway. I don't care. It was awful. And I just was like, really? Like, this is who you're, spotlighting? But there were some really great moments in that. You know, when North Star gets his memory back, he goes on a rampage with Iceman and Richter. So it's the three gay X-Men characters, and that was really great to see them kind of bond and be have a great moment and a ruckus, so to speak. So I really enjoyed them in those moments. With Prisoner X, which is a pretty interesting concept, you had well, to begin with, you have an illicit affair between Bishop and Jean Grey. Wow. So they're having an affair. They get caught. And instead of Jean Grey being punished for it, Bishop is. And he's sent over to Prisoner X to the jail, which is led by Forge. And he teams up with Beast and some other people who were in there, Honey Badger's in there, and Polaris, who has gone crazy. And one of the interesting things that I thought was really, really great is all the time you see her in the jail, she, without anything, she's just holding herself like this. And then we don't find out until a couple later issues later is in her mind she has a straitjacket on. So before that, she's still acting as if she does. So I thought that was a really great moment. And then you have the anomaly of Danny Moonstar, who's a New Mutant, one of my favorites, who actually had a relationship with X-Men way back in one of the New Mutants volumes. And why I say anomaly is because she also simultaneously existed in the regular Marvel universe and was part of the Uncanny X-Men lineup with that Rosenberg was writing. So it was like, why is she here and here? And we find out later that who else is in the prison? Legion. And Legion is one of his, or Danny Moonstar is one of his uh, personalities or something like that that's also been in prison. And Nate Gray has put her in prison because he doesn't want to have that kind of, that was his love, that was his person, so he doesn't want to see her, he doesn't want to have that going on, so he's imprisoned her. So she kind of shows up but then disappears and shows up and disappears, so it's this weird kind of like mystery. And then in Marvelous X-Men you have like the big heavy hitters in that title, which would be Magneto, Storm, Wolverine, X-23, Jean Grey, Bishop, which is gone, X-Man, and Colossus. And so it was these, and Nightcrawler's in it as well. So it was these big heavy hitter, and it was probably one of the most boring of them all. And they were, you know, the heroes of the world, and you find out that the extremists were the one who were causing problems so that they could solve them. So that was kind of an interesting thing, you know. X-Men created a world where there didn't need to be any conflict, but the X-Men still needed that conflict to keep happening. So he would instigate and create his own mess and then clean it up. Sounds familiar. And then you have a great moment between Storm and Magneto when they finally start to put things together about X-Men and, you know, what's going on, and they see past images of their lives in the Marvel Universe, and it's a great moment to see them kind of figuring things out. And these are two super powerful characters, so to see that, that was kind of really cool. And then you have the Amazing Nightcrawler, which was a very fun romp. It was actually probably one of the funnest reads of the entire lineup. It's him being a movie star with Megan, who was great. And it turns out they have a daughter together, who they kind of have to hide. And, you know, it's basically set up in a Hollywood system where there's studios, so there's two rival studios. And that's kind of interesting to have. And it utilizes a very large supporting cast very well, which I really appreciated and liked. And then, you know, it's also one of the most tragic of the group because, you know, he has to decide what to do with this child that he's apparently, you know, created along with Megan, who doesn't remember this at all either. So it's this kind of really like push-pull situation, and he ends up, in order to save the child, having his memory wiped so he can protect her and have Megan go off and raise the child, which I thought was a really, really interesting way to end that series. And then, you know, you all this 5 months later, you have the, you know, the resolution where they're like, why are you messing around with this, Nate? What's going on? What's the truth? What's the truth? And they meet up again, and it's everyone realizing what happened. And one of the interesting bits that I thought was well done, even if it was rushed a lot, was the reunion of Danny and X-Man even if she was a construct. And that kind of moment between the two of them, I thought it was really, really great. I thought it worked really well. Um, and then it was the realization that, Nate, you can't do this anymore. You have to send us back. You have to erase our memories. We can't live like this. And the person who made this decision was Jean Grey. And of course, she goes back and she's fine, and nothing's going to really affect her. But these other characters, like Nature Girl or Surge or someone like that, who is now living their best life, they're the ones who are going to suffer because of her decision. And I thought that was really interesting, but they, of course, didn't really, expand on that. And then no one wants to really make the decision, so who does? Magneto. He comes in and says, I'm always cleaning up your mess, X-Men. I will do this and make the decision for you. He sends everybody back in, and then he leaves as well. And then at the very end, you see a scene between Magneto and Nate Grey, where they talk about a little bit of why it didn't work out and what they could have done to make it better, kind of leading things to maybe another story. But overall, I thought this was a big miss, partly because this is kind of, it just felt like such a filler storyline before House of X Powers of 10 took over. So that's a real kind of tragedy for it. I wanted it to be a lot better, but I just don't think it succeeded. I thought it was too long. And I get they probably had to pad it because, they're waiting to make sure that all the stuff by Hickman lined up, correct. But I was just like, this is kind of a big miss. Interesting concept. Execution left a lot for desired. Some good artwork here and there, but overall it was just kind of like, and that's not what you want in a storyline. But maybe I can be, maybe my mind can be changed. You let me know which title was one of your favorite. Was it Marvelous X-Men? Was it Next Gen? Was it Apocalypse and the X-Tracts? Was it X-Tremists? Was it Amazing Nightcrawler? You let me know. Tell me what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share. And I will be back with some more Marvel goodness for you soon. And as always, it's all geek to us. See you later.